everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. My name is Candice Marie. Thanks for joining me. I'll be your astrologer today. Happy Thursday, everybody. I hope your week is going well. This is going to be my first of what will probably be several dives into Mercury and Sagittarius. So this will be Mercury entering Sagittarius, and I'm titling this video The Illusion of Separation. If you like my content, you want to see more of it, make sure you click the bell button below so you're alerted to when we have new videos coming out on the channel. We're here every Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Sunday, horoscopes, lunar reports, and much, much more. I appreciate your guys' comments, your likes, your shares. It really helps with the growth of the channel. Any interaction is helpful, like a thumbs up or a comment below. And if this is your first time watching, let me know where you're tuning in from. Obviously you might just be meeting me, but my name's Candice. I'm a Western astrologer. I practice with tarot as well as the Sabian Symbols to make sense of what's going on in the cosmos. So for today's video, we are going to be taking a look at Mercury's trek through the sign of Sagittarius. Just a heads up, trigger warning. I'll put this out early in the video. This video, we're going to be discussing some real hot button topics, okay, globally. But I'm sure we can be adults about these topics and call a spade or agree to disagree. Feel free to leave a comment. Let me know what are your thoughts, and be sure to exercise your First Amendment rights, even if we don't agree, right? That's the beauty of this discussion today. All right, so we've got Mercury that is going to be moving into the sign of Sagittarius. We will see this ingress taking place on November 10th, 2023. And Mercury will be in Sagittarius all the way through January 13th, 2024. And you're like, what? Record scratch? Why so long? Because Mercury will retrograde through this sign. So that will be a separate video, but I'm going to touch on some of the major kind of points in regards to that in today's discussion. So we're going to have Mercury in Sagittarius for a little bit longer than usual. We'll see it briefly go into Capricorn, where it will turn retrograde in December. And Mercury is the god of communication, systems, travel, gadgets, ideas, cars, exchange. And it's moving through the sign of Sagittarius, which is a mutable fire sign. So Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter. It is known to be optimistic, independent, wanderlust. They are freedom fighters. They are all about being idealistic, jovial, and they're natural teachers. So those of you guys who are ruled by Mercury, if you are a Gemini or a Virgo rising, you're going to be feeling this ingress pretty strongly, as well as my fellow Sagittarius risings. But some of the big themes that kind of come up for me before we get into the various transits, I'll take you guys through the transits. Probably the big one is that technically Mercury is going to be moving into a sign where it's considered to be in its fall. Now, when a planet is in its fall, essentially it means that it's in a sign where its natural abilities or energies are not easily expressed or are somewhat hindered. So the concept of fall is based off of traditional astrological interpretations and the idea that each planet has signs where it functions more so harmoniously. Generally, we like to see Mercury moving through Gemini or Virgo, where it does a little bit better. So when it moves into its opposite sign of Gemini, it's in its fall, which means it's in its opposite sign. So we're going to see some challenges with Mercury being in this placement. Here's some things that you might want to just kind of keep in mind with Mercury moving through Sag. It's very likely that throughout this particular transit, we're going to see some conflicting energies because Mercury is associated with communication, intellectual conversations, logical thinking, and it has a real focus on, information in detail. This is why it does so well in Gemini and Virgo, where these qualities are highly valued. But when it moves through Sagittarius, on the other hand, a sign associated with expansion, broad perspectives, philosophical thinking, and a love for exploration of higher ideas, we find that Mercury's energy can be a little scattered. We might find that it's clashing with Mercury's analytical kind of tendency and very detail-oriented nature. Remember, Sag is ruled by Jupiter, so it's expansive and it is including or kind of encompassing multiple things. I feel like moving through this sign, we're going to see that there is going to be some impulsiveness that's going to come up, although that's going to get checked really early on in the transit. Sagittarius is known for its enthusiasm and preference for action over careful analysis. This can make Mercury's traditional kind of meticulous and thoughtful approach to things feel out of place, and it's going to be a little bit more spontaneous and adventurous, more so than it usually is. We can see that there can be a tendency to either over-exaggerate or over-generalize. Both of these themes can come up with Mercury in Sag. If you're somebody who has a natal Mercury in Sagittarius or in the 9th house, you know that there can sometimes be a tendency to jump to conclusions or make broad generalizations. Sometimes you may catch yourself overlooking crucial details when communicating or thinking with other people. There could be, big ideas and concepts that can be coming up, but maybe we can be overlooking some of the finer points. And obviously with Sagittarius being a fire sign, there is going to be some restlessness that can come up during this transit as well. Mercury and Sag can become easily bored with routine or repetitive tasks. They prefer variety and excitement over, anything else. They really enjoy intellectual pursuits, but this can also lead to difficulties in focusing on practical and mundane matters. So it's important to really kind of pay attention to some of these themes through this particular transit, because there's going to be a number of squares as well, which could hinder our ability to communicate clearly or adhere to certain kind of schedule routines, or be able to honor, certain kind of commitments. Now, something else to keep in mind is that, Mercury in Sagittarius is not all bad. This transit can bring about positive qualities such as enthusiasm, really putting an emphasis on a love for learning and an open-minded approach to ideas and culture. So we may excel in the fields, we might see more escalation in the fields of philosophy, travel, higher education, and exploring world perspectives. I think that's the positive. I find that Mercury in Sagittarius is always looking for the silver lining in situations. And if you guys caught my video that I did on Tuesday, I talk about how Mercury will be making some harmonious aspects to Venus. So it's not all bad. There is some support here. Just keep in mind that we can kind of get into some trouble with some of these mutable squares that we'll be experiencing between Sagittarius and also Pisces. Now, when we see squares between these two particular signs, one thing that I want you to keep in mind is that these are mutable squares that we will be experiencing. Basically, both Sagittarius and Pisces are both mutable energies, which means they share the same qualities of being able to adapt. They're flexible, and they are willing to create change. However, when they form a square to one another, these shared qualities can sometimes lead to conflicts due to the instability and changeability of these two particular signs. So we may see changes in the area of Sagittarius as well as the area of Pisces that are kind of duking it out, kind of dueling it with each other. Now, these two particular signs cover themes revolving around idealism and philosophy. So Sagittarius is known for idealism, love of philosophy, and the pursuit of higher truths. Pisces, on the other hand, is known for being deeply empathetic, spiritual, and sensitive. So collectively, when we see this square, it will highlight clashes between idealism and intuition. We may find that there is a struggle to reconcile our philosophical beliefs with our intuitive emotional insights, especially because, Sagittarius is an energy that deals with Jupiter. So it's about expansive qualities. It's about global themes. It's about the quote unquote right thing to do, the moral thing to do. And then we're going to have also a Jupiter energy, but also a Neptune energy with Pisces, where there can be a sense of kind of getting lost in translation. I think that's going to happen a lot throughout this transit, but also having some confusing conversations or some misunderstandings, or I think in this case, quite frankly, the illusion of separation. Now, illusions being very much connected to Pisces or Neptune, things that are kind of foggy or not so clear, whether they're falsely represented or there are things that just quite, frankly, don't make sense. We will see throughout the transit of Mercury and Sagittarius that we are going to be digging deep into our belief systems. We're going to be digging deep into dreams. We're going to be talking about symbolism. We're also going to be talking a lot about culture and religion. Now, it is possible that this brings up a bit of a clash between realism and optimism. because Sagittarius tends to be optimistic and forward thinking, while Pisces can lean towards escapism or a preference for dreamy and imaginative energies. So the square can create conflicts between the need for realistic goals and the desire to indulge in fantasy or avoid facing practical matters. Now, it is possible that there can be a sense of overextension and escapism that can come with these particular squares, because both signs have a tendency to overextend themselves, being connected to Jupiter, but in different ways. Sagittarius can take on too many commitments or projects due to its boundless enthusiasm, while Pisces might seek refuge in escapism or avoidance. So the square between these two signs can bring about issues related to balancing out these tendencies. It's going to be very obvious. I mean, we're going to have a stellium of placements in Sagittarius. Eventually, the Sun and Mercury will join, and we will see a number of squares to Saturn where we're going to be experiencing delays or having to slow down. We're also going to be experiencing squares to Neptune this Sagittarius season, which might represent some kind of collective dissolving. Now, I remember in a previous video telling you guys that I thought that this Sagittarius season was going to be very interesting. We've got a lot of planets moving through Sagittarius in a superior position. So it's squaring on the right-hand side of Saturn, which means it's kind of coming down and throwing down the hammer on Saturn, where there's going to be lots of talk, Mercury, action Mars, and also highlighting Sun, Sagittarius themes, and it's going to be checking Saturn. So we're going to be seeing that we're checking authority figures, we are checking boundaries, we are checking our auric field, we're checking our emotions, or where we really kind of need to kind of get out of our own way and not be passive or, potentially even, having self-undoing tendencies. Now, I do think that one theme that I've seen personally a lot with squares between Sagittarius and Pisces is conflict between freedom and empathy. So Sagittarius energy really values personal freedom and independence, right? It's a fire sign. But the squares to Pisces can be deeply empathetic and maybe more willing to sacrifice their own needs for others. So the square aspects can create inner conflicts between the desire for freedom and the call to be selfless and compassionate. Now, it's possible that this will also bring up themes revolving around challenges in pursuing our beliefs and our dreams. On an individual level, we may face challenges in pursuing our spiritual or philosophical beliefs and dreams. We will most likely encounter obstacles, skepticism, or a lack of practical support for some of our aspirations. And all squares create tension, but I think in this case, it could be creative tension. It'll bring creative tension, and I think the positive side of this is that if this square is handled or harnessed positively, it can lead to innovative solutions, merging ideas with practicality, blending philosophical insights and empathic understanding. And as always, squares also lead to the ability for adaptability and growth, especially when they're in the mutable signs. Both of these signs are willing to adapt and grow. That's what mutable placements do. But I think the square encourages both individual houses or signs to learn how to work together and how to navigate tensions between their two separate natures, ultimately leading to personal growth and better understanding. So we're going to have this retrograde, right? So retrograde, Mercury, we are reviewing, revisiting, rethinking, returning. So all of those things might be kind of coming up for you. We're not immediately going to go into the shadow. The shadow is not actually going to begin until we hit about 22 degrees of Sagittarius, and the retrograde itself will be from 22 degrees of Sagittarius through 8 degrees of Capricorn. So you'll see that in a separate video. We'll talk about that a little bit. But in light of the fact that we are going to experience Mercury in its shadow, it's really important to be aware of that and prepared for that. It does kind of add a little bit more of like an extra oomph. I feel like, having Mercury go through a sign of its fall where it's going to have challenge expressing itself, squaring Saturn, we may have an issue with like timelines and meeting deadlines and communication and travel related issues. Then we're going to see a square to Neptune, which might represent more confusion, and then a retrograde where it will make the square to Neptune several times. So things can get lost, right? Things can go missing. There can be a total misunderstanding. There could be, documents that go missing. I think we're going to see lots of issues with travel. So just take into consideration that this is a Mercury retrograde that you're going to want to be more so prepared for. So do your due diligence to do all of your Mercury related things, hopefully prior to Mercury going into shadow. I have the date for that here somewhere. Let's see. So it looks like Mercury is going to go into shadow November 25th, okay? So you guys are watching this the beginning of November. You have plenty of time while Mercury is in Scorpio to get your shift together. I'm really liking when Mercury starts getting into the late degrees of Scorpio and sextiling Pluto, making some trines to Neptune. Wonderful time to tap into your intuition, make some commitments to things prior to getting Mercury into Sagittarius, because it's going to have some rocky terrain with the squares to placements in Pisces. So yeah, it pays to be prepared. But being prepared for a Mercury retrograde sometimes means that we need to be aware of some of the themes of the retrograde, right? So when Mercury stops and it appears to go retrograde, it's really just an optical illusion from Earth. But Mercury is turning inward. So we might find that there is more communication breakdown. We have delays. There is a need for us to be mindful of our words. There is a need to go back and rework or re-edit things or double check stuff. So the big thing for me with the Mercury retrograde is back up important data, okay? Do that if you need to, whether it's your work computers or important documents or data. Make sure that you back up your files before Mercury goes retrograde. There can be technology issues during this period. I'm thinking about people like losing information regarding travel, people losing legal documents because it's going through Sag. People also losing passports or, issues revolving around visas can be coming up. And yeah, especially like losing gadgets at airports and traveling, that could definitely be a theme with Mercury and Sagittarius, because Sagittarius deals with colleges and airports and international travel. Pisces is going to be things involving screens. So we might see that, stuff can get damaged or it can get wet as well. Communicate clearly. So pay extra attention to your communication. Be as clear and concise as possible in your conversations, emails, and messages, and avoid making important decisions. If something is unclear or you are not sure, or if you don't have all the details, that's really important with this particular Mercury and Sag transit. Obviously, Mercury goes retrograde 3 times a year, sometimes 4. So we have to kind of roll with the punches, right? Life happens. But I do feel like this Mercury retrograde in particular, especially if you're a mutable sign, is going to be a little trickier than most of these retrogrades. So avoid signing contracts or delay signing important contracts and agreements. If you must sign something, read the fine print carefully and consider seeking legal advice, especially because it's going to be in Sagittarius. Double and triple check all of your travel plans. Make sure you confirm reservations, check your flight schedules, allow extra time to be able to come and go, and prepare for unexpected delays. Travel disruptions are very common during Mercury retrograde, and we are going to see a lot of them during this one in particular. My advice is make sure that you know where all of your travel documents are and you're putting luggage tags on your bags. Review and reflect, right? Because the retrograde wants us to go back and make the necessary adjustments. So this is a wonderful period to revisit plans, projects, or ideas that you have not completed. Mind your words. Be mindful that it's really important that you are clear about what you're saying, you know what you're talking about, and you're aware of how you're saying it, because miscommunications happen during a retrograde, but more so easily when we're seeing Mercury in its fall and some squares to Neptune. So think before you speak. Be patient, stay organized, reconnect and reflect, and take time for self-care, because Mercury retrograde can sometimes bring stress and frustration. So practice mindfulness, stress reduction techniques, or meditation to stay grounded and balanced, okay? Now, something else that comes up for me is the 24th degree of Sagittarius. If you guys caught my video on Tuesday, I talked about the interesting kind of inconjunct or the quincunx that Venus made to Neptune at 24. We will also see Mercury square Neptune at 24. We will see Mercury in its retrograde conjunct Mars at 24. So that particular degree keeps coming up a lot. And I want to read you guys what this Sabian symbol is. It's going to be 24 and change, so we're going to read 25 degrees. And here we go. So 25 degrees, a chubby boy on a hobby horse. The theme is rehearsal. The symbol speaks to imagination, ambition, a desire for excitement and adventure. The playful image of a chubby boy on a hobby horse stresses the value of imitation, vicarious experience, pretense, and make-believe in helping individuals refine or achieve their goals. The emphasis here is on resourcefulness, or the ability to make creative use of whatever is at hand, or refined skills needed to make a dream come true. At its highest, the symbol represents the vision and determination to elevate, dignify the little things of life. Watch for self-pampering, false pretense, imposterism, and delusions of grandeur. The accent is on ambition. Wannabes, lookalikes, and other hopefuls may make their desires known in some dramatic way. Your greatest advantage lies in trying your hand at what you think you would like to do or be someday and how you'd like it. If you don't have the resources you need, improvise and make do with whatever you can find at hand. Guard against exaggerating your abilities or accomplishments. You'll likely get found out. Take care not to get so involved in your work or hobbies that you neglect your family responsibilities. Stepping stones are role play, make-believe, imitation, modeling, vicarious experiences, copying, aspiration, ambition, rehearsal, practice, determination, desire, and vision. So it's so interesting. And once again, I'll talk about it more in my other video, but especially about the conjunction with Mars. Like it's so interesting to watch Mercury square Neptune, and then through the retrograde, there will be a conjunction to Mars. So I have a whole list of things that I think, might kind of play into that. But for me, I think of the importance of play and innocence, right? Symbolizing this carefree, childlike nature, a need to return to a more simple or like childlike manner. And so it can be about playing make-believe or role-playing. It can also be about imagination and creativity. And I think this is about tapping into our imaginative side and reminding us of the power of belief. In many cases, I think the power of faith in our belief systems. This can be about indulgence and enjoyment, because I think this is about lighthearted activities and a reminder to enjoy the simpler things and not take life too seriously. Revisiting the past, obviously, is a theme. I think more in a metaphorical sense, the symbol can suggest revisiting past interests, hobbies, pursuits that once brought you some kind of fulfillment. And it encourages reconnecting with the elements of your past that you still value. Spirit of adventure. And I think this is really about, taking risks and pursuing new experiences with a sense of like fearlessness. Being that this particular square is going to be at 24 degrees, I think we're going to hear a lot with Sagittarius and Pisces about people returning to their faith, or returning back to church or temple, returning back to places or belief systems, or reflecting on, where they have visited, reflecting on what they've learned in the past. I definitely think that's going to be coming up. We are going to see many hot button issues really kind of come to a head. More of that might be when Mars gets involved, but it's kind of hard to say. I do believe that international issues with immigration and borders are going to be a huge theme. And part of the reason I think that is because right off the bat with the ingress chart of Mercury, Mercury immediately comes into a square with Saturn in Pisces. So that particular square does kind of represent a challenge in communication, documents or laws or legality revolving around borders or boundaries or walls. And Sagittarius is, legal things. It's also about, immigration or other cultures, and the square to Saturn. Now, I believe there's going to be more cultural and religious clashes because Sag deals with belief in laws, and because Pisces deals with organized religion, and it can also be dealing with foreigners. I've seen some of this already kind of started coming up in the news. I think to some extent, in my opinion, in many ways, some of the topics and some of the issues that are going to come up from these squares may dissolve our own awareness of our own culture, our own countries. And I'm anticipating as Mars joins Sagittarius, we are definitely going to be seeing some protests and a lot of confusing energies. Expect big news around universities and their practices and their teachings. It's kind of mind-boggling to see some of the stuff that's going on right now, but Just recently watched one of the more recent videos from Tucker Carlson that he put out on X. And it was interesting because he had somebody on there who was like a lawyer who happened to be Jewish, who was representing people in Ukraine who are basically being cast out of society because they are practicing Christians. And they're taking people who are running, Christian groups or who are essentially leading Christian groups and putting them in jail. So he's representing them and basically saying that, part of the work that he's always done is to support people's right to be able to practice their faith or their religion or their beliefs, even if it differs from his own, which in my mind is like so, very much the squares between these two signs. Like I said, Sagittarius is going to be superior. So we're going to see that there's going to be lots of talk about judges and lawyers and law and legality revolving around Pisces-related matters. Private institutions, people's right to worship, things involving foreigners, things also involving prisoners in jail or hospitals, right? So there's going to be lots of talk about taking action in regards to these topics. And like I said, Sagittarius is about freedom fighting. So we're definitely going to see a lot of people who are going to have some very bold beliefs that are going to be coming up that people are going to be discussing in an open forum. Now, I also anticipate that there's going to be more clash around race, ethnicity, and culture because Sagittarius is very much about these topics, but also how these topics influence the courts, law, college admission, or our beliefs in general. There's some stuff happening right now in the Supreme Court revolving around gender-related matters, culture, and also like ethnicity. I mean, go and take a look at it. There is talk as to whether or not future decisions about elections and future decisions about law is going to be heavily decided based upon certain ethnic groups and percentages of ethnic groups and how they may vote, and assuming that certain ethnic groups are going to vote along specific party lines. Scary stuff. I think there's going to be lots of public opinion about war, okay? And I think more so of this is going to happen when Mars gets into Sagittarius and we see that retrograde in conjunction to Mars. But I think it's going to be about war, why we fight it. But in reality, it's about who's pulling the strings behind the curtain, who's pushing the narrative for needing endless wars. How is this going to impact all of us collectively and further isolate or divide us? After all, like I said, this is all about the illusion of separation. Sometimes when we see squares between two sides, we see two separate signs that kind of feel like they need to stand their ground. They need to challenge one another. And really, this is about recognizing that they have a lot more in common than they might be aware of. So I think that this is going to be an opportunity for us collectively to realize that there is an agenda to divide people, to get us all kind of wound up about what's going on internationally and fail to, number one, stay grounded, but number two, be more focused with what's going on in our own lives, our own countries, our own elections. I think that this could be something that can really be quite a distracting and confusing energy, to be honest with you. I'm anticipating when Mercury comes into conjunction with Mars and it's retrograde that we're going to see some impulsive speeches, especially about war, some leaders that are very assertive or making some assertive moves and maybe jumping to conclusions. Neptune is going to be like a blind spot, right? It's something that's hazy or something that is not clear. We cannot really see very clearly. It could be bad weather, but it could also be, misrepresented or falsely translated information. So we really, really want to be mindful that more so than usual, there is so much potential for misunderstanding and jumping to conclusions, and that landing us in some hot water, especially when it comes to our actions when Mars gets involved. Now, I'm anticipating some big court cases, especially around religious practices. Like I said, I'm very curious now watching some of the stuff that's going on in the Ukraine where Christians are being persecuted. I am very curious to see how that may, transpire. I know that there is a number of international laws and other various, rules that should uphold the freedom to be able to practice what we want to practice globally, right? Not just any one particular country, but globally. I anticipate that there will be some false information coming out, misrepresented numbers, especially in regards to travel, in regards to education or hospitals. Mercury in Sag makes me think of college students. It makes me think of law professors. It makes me think of international import or exporting matters, and challenges revolving around the factual data information or limits in travel, especially internationally or by water. We might hear some issues revolving around conflict that's escalating in other parts of the world and how it's impacting our ability to import and export, and having some issues maybe within international waters. I'm expecting extreme weather, especially affecting flights and international travel. To be honest with you, the Mars-Mercury conjunction square Neptune does make me feel like it's prepped and primed for false flag attacks, for terrorist attacks, especially involving airports and international travel. Things that could be heat or, sharp, so it could be weapons. We could see issues with bombs that could happen. Obviously, touch wood, we hope not. But I'm really, really expecting there to be lots of media misrepresenting things. Okay, so I don't know what it will be. I don't know if it's going to be along the lines of, pictures and audio and videos. I mean, some of this stuff has already happened. There's been some stuff that's come out just in some of these recent things that have been going on in Gaza and also Israel. The media reusing certain images and videos of things, being bombed and blowing up. I'm not saying that these events aren't happening, but they're reusing media to almost kind of further propel everybody's kind of fear into this escalation of potential war. But personally, I'm more concerned about domestic conflict, not necessarily about global war, although I think that will be the narrative. I'm concerned about distorted ideas of, fighting the system, where those who feel that they've been cast out of society band together, and this becomes a very dangerous mix. It is possible that there is a lot of people who are very, very disillusioned with whose fight they're fighting, or whose cause they're getting involved in. I think that the front line in war is going to be on domestic lands. I'm watching stuff that's going on, like the protests in London right now, riots against the police, where you've got people setting off fireworks and things against the police, and you've got people who are outnumbering the police like pretty much 10-1. Recent protests in Washington D.C., where you've got people attacking monuments and the White House gates. And more of that going on in New York City as well. Thousands upon thousands of people taking the streets, protesting what's going on with this conflict in the Middle East. But the real attacks that will be coming, especially the secret attacks, because Mars and Mercury will conjunct at 24 degrees, will not be announced. They will not come through the front door. They will creep in slowly through broken borders, religious and ethnic divide, through our universities and our schools who are indoctrinating children. I have concerns about sleeper cells and those who hide in plain sight. People who are getting involved in the woke mind virus, in the administration that's turning a blind eye to the real threats and the problems that threaten all of our security and safety. I keep asking myself, where are the freedom fighters, the people who were protesting for Black Lives Matter or gay rights, trans movements, the feminist march? Where are all these people that were so concerned about having safe spaces, or people who are very sensitive to microaggressions or hate speech? Where are these people now? Why is it that we're seeing domestic radical left supporters aligning themselves with religious extremists? I'm concerned personally, and you all have your own perspective. Certainly this whole situation in the Middle East is extremely complex, but if you really break it down, if you were to look at Hamas or people who consider themselves to be radical, Islamists, fundamentally, whether you consider them a terrorist group or not, on a religious level, these people condemn Christians and Jews, not just Jews. They condemn Christians as well. And then obviously Catholics, I would assume, anything that is not potentially their religion, and gays. So even if you're Islamic, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're radical Islamic and aligning yourself with some of these Hamas beliefs, but we are seeing this on some college campuses, We're seeing, various walks of life and people who are supporting, whether it's Black Lives Matter supporters, whether this is people who are also involved in the LGBTQ movements. There's lots of groups who are in many ways feeling like they're wanting to jump on and support other people who they consider to be kind of, fringe, or people who have been cast out in society. I'm concerned about the First Amendment rights. And I think that this is also going to be definitely a huge topic of debate for hate speech and what is considered to be hate speech, whether or not people are making decisions or dictating what is and is not hate speech, limiting potentially or rolling back through the retrograde the ability for us to speak our mind. Personally, I feel like I'm a big girl. The First Amendment right, essentially, for me, also has to be given to those who I don't agree with. We have to give enemies their First Amendment right as well. Even in the face of potential hate speech, even in the face of potential conflicts and divide and, not agreeing, we have to get to the point where we can agree to disagree at the very least. I think we should let people shoot themselves in the foot. If they want to be ignorant or racist, or if they want to say hateful things, let them show themselves. It's a really dangerous position to be in when we're shutting down free speech. Watch for virtue signaling. I think that's going to be a huge theme, especially with the topics of Sagittarius and Pisces. I do anticipate we're going to be hearing more about critical race theory. But personally, I think behind all of the fancy words for this, it really comes down to Marxism. And this being taught among universities and schools and, children that are being indoctrinated. I think that the lesson throughout this transit is to really focus on being united. And if we are united, we're together. But if we're divided, we fall. All right, so let's get into the transits. Let's take a look. Let's see what we got going on. It's going to start with November the 10th. And this is right when Mercury moves into Sagittarius. So off the bat, we got Mercury in Sag, and it will come into an immediate square with Saturn. So keep in mind, throughout this year, the next 2 years, really, anytime planets go through the mutable signs, they're going to get checked by Saturn. And this is a third quarter square. So even though Sagittarius is in a superior position, so much of the Mercury retrograde is trying to bring the truth out into the open. It's trying to kind of get us to talk about this in a global sense. There is some challenges and some hangups and delays with communication. I do feel like because Mercury represents communication and Saturn brings limits, with this square, we might be feeling challenges in expressing ourselves clearly, and there can be a struggle with self-doubt or fear of saying the wrong thing, leading to self-censorship. For me, this is like, probably a lot of people talk about cancel culture. I do think that that's going to be coming up a lot, and a lot of people feeling very strongly and having very strong opinions. And potentially even criticizing, leaders, because Saturn is very much going to be about that. You'll see that as well when Mars and the Sun come into a square with Saturn. Rigid thinking can come up. Fear of authority, that's another one, because Saturn is associated with authority figures. So with this aspect, there can be a fear of being judged or criticized, or the impact that communication can have on authority figures. Likely, we'll be feeling some resistance to change. We have to be really thinking about, are we being practical, or are we being idealistic? Are we choosing to just turn a blind eye to things and act like everything's fine and that it's just normal? It is important for us to be exercising responsibility when it comes to communication. But overall, I think that this square can teach us perseverance. And despite the challenges with this aspect, it can allow us to have the determination and the ability to work through difficulties, and likely provide us the opportunity to have like a really strong work ethic. And we learn from these experiences. So with Mercury square Saturn, we might get some constructive criticism, or we might, have somebody who makes a tweak or makes a suggestion to somebody, and it'll help us kind of navigate some of these tensions. It's a pretty quick moving square, but I would say just take it into consideration, because Mars is going to make the same square, the Sun is going to make the same square. So it's almost like Mercury is pulling ahead right now and saying, hey, I'm getting the information that this challenge is coming, or that we're going to have these issues. So when the Sun and Mars come through, we have that full moon that's going to be in Gemini, you're going to see a lot of people that are going to be up in arms about something going on involving around the topics that we've discussed. Now, on the 13th of the month, we're going to see Mercury sextile Venus in Libra. And that'll be a sextile that'll happen, you know, off and on for a bit. It's going to happen for a couple days. But this does lend energy to being able to share maybe what we've learned about loss and letting go. Venus, after all, rules the South Node. It can be more pleasant communication. It can be more harmonious interactions. It can really allow us to see the bright side of things. But this will be happening in the midst of a new moon in Scorpio conjunct Mars. So not the easiest energy to deal with. All these oppositions to Uranus are quite challenging. So maybe this is just kind of like looking at things going like, okay, you know, times are tough, but what am I learning? And trying to stay optimistic in spite of some of the more challenging things that are going on in the world. On the 15th, and this is an important one, we're going to see Mercury in conjunct Jupiter. Now, Mercury is the dispositor, okay, of Jupiter. And now I'm seeing this, and I didn't see this in my Venus video, but Mercury and Venus are going to sextile, and they're creating almost like a yod. You guys see that? To Jupiter. Jupiter's retrograde. But this is important for a number of reasons. One, you know, Jupiter rules Sagittarius. So when the moon is in Sagittarius, when Mercury's in Sagittarius, I'm looking at Jupiter. And we're going to see both the moon and Mercury make inconjuncts or quincunxes here to planets in Taurus. For me, this is going to bring up communication challenges, okay? So there is going to be a tendency, or at least a tendency with this aspect, to overreach, right? Because Jupiter's influence often encourages optimism and a desire for more, while Mercury's domain is precision and detail. So this aspect is going to have a tendency to overreach, overpromise, you know, underdeliver or overlook crucial details when expressing ourselves. This will heavily bring up the topic of idealism versus realism, especially because Jupiter is in an earth sign, which is very grounded and practical. And so I do think that there may be a conflict in idealistic and optimistic thinking and a need to remain grounded and practical. It can create inner tension when we try to balance the bigger picture visions with specifics required to achieve our goals. In the back of my mind, because Jupiter is connected to you know, Uranus as well, and we've got all these planets making oppositions, that I think, you know, there's some rocky stuff coming mid-November financially in the world. And I think you're going to hear a lot of analysts, that's Mercury, saying things like, this isn't that bad, it's going to get better, you know, it's soft landing. And it's like, I don't really think it's going to be. I think that, you know, they're not going to want to spook people or spook the markets prior to shopping season or holiday season. And there could be way too much optimism about what's going on with these failing banks, and also some of this just suspicious stuff happening with financial institutions. I don't know. Seems a little sketch to me. Opportunities to learn from mistakes. You know, I think because Mercury in conjunct Jupiter may go through an experience that teaches us to be more cautious and thorough in thinking and in communication. So it's possible that we're learning from past mistakes, such as overestimating our abilities or underestimating the effort required in some way. These particular aspects are going to teach us to be adaptable. So I think that this is about being open to making adjustments in how we communicate and how we think. We're going to need to develop more flexibility and an ability to switch between detailed analysis and broad philosophical thinking. I think we can be enthusiastic about learning. That's the positive side of that. You know, despite these challenges, this aspect can indicate a genuine enthusiasm for learning and expanding our knowledge. And we'll be more curious and eager to explore new ideas and new concepts. And this is all about finding the balance, guys. So we're going to need to work more consciously in refining our communication and breaking down larger concepts into more manageable parts. So that way we can be a little bit more mindful about the details. So then we're going to take this to the 20th. And this is when we finally start to see like some harmonious things happening, finally. We're going to begin to see Mercury start coming into a trine with Chiron. Okay, so yeah, it looks like it's going to be in the evening. But Mercury's up here, still sextiling Venus slightly, but it's now trining Chiron. So we are learning about how to communicate maybe and express our needs, express our wounds. We're learning how to maybe focus more on healing ourselves or being optimistic or giving ourselves like more freedom when it comes to learning more about ourselves. This particular day, we're going to see the moon go into Pisces and it's going to start squaring Mercury. So it is going to make it more challenging, I think, to do this. Obviously, we're navigating things on a very intuitive level with that moon in Pisces, but Mercury trine Chiron is about being able to share the lessons in being wounded or healing with other people, and that we might be able to like teach through example. And then on the 24th, we're going to see Mercury in conjunct Uranus in Taurus. Now, this is important. Let me bring this back a little bit. This is important for a number of reasons. For me, I think the big one is, you know, so many in conjuncts to Taurus is really going to be highlighting where Taurus says, make it real, make it tangible. You know, I want to hold it. I want to spend it. I want to eat it. You know, I want to have something physical. And Sag says, yeah, anything's possible. And their head can kind of be in the clouds. So there can be some challenges brewing about what is physically possible. In the background, Mercury is also starting to come into a square with Neptune as well. So that kind of creates a problem. But Mercury quincunx Uranus, which is retrograde, is definitely going to be about some really big changes. It's out of 20 degrees, so it's about changes and transformations to our values, our finances, and our physical, you know, things, our resources, what we possess. Likely, this will be bringing up unconventional thinking because Uranus is associated with innovation and originality and thinking outside of the box. So when we see Mercury in conjunct, it can lead to unconventional thought processes and a desire to break free from traditional or conventional ideas. This can also bring erratic communication. So I do feel like some people are going to be thinking outside of the box and being like, this is what's coming and like, this is what we need to do to learn. And this is how we learn about some of the global trends with resources and funding. But Mercury will start squaring Neptune. And I think some people are going to be erratic and some people are going to be looked at as just just literally crazy. Individuals who have this aspect, may experience challenges in how they communicate. So if you've got a Mercury Neptune in conjunct, sometimes you might feel like you're kind of just overwhelmed, or maybe like you stuck your finger in a light socket. There can be a sense of just thinking very scattered. And it's also about, communicating in a way that's fast-paced and changeable. So yeah, we might just find that communication and ideas are a little bit more unpredictable and erratic with this. Restlessness comes up with Mercury-Uranus aspects, but also sudden insights. So it can bring unexpected flashes of inspiration. And the mind might operate in bursts of brilliance that can disrupt the traditional flow of thoughts. This can be bringing difficulty in concentration, especially because Taurus placements like to be very grounded. And I find that Mercury and Sag is kind of like fluttering around in like different topics and different issues. We might see that there are certain people that are speaking out about Taurus-related things that don't know what they're talking about. Judges that are making decisions about the values of properties that are highly, deflating or devaluing certain things. Professors or teachers that are, trying to talk about the reality of what's going on with financial situations, but nobody wants to listen, nobody wants to hear it. Politicians or, leaders maybe talking about with great optimism, the future of what physical changes are coming, but, it may not necessarily translate very well. This is also going to definitely bring up some rebellious thinking. I think that Mercury that is in conjunct Uranus can give us a bit of a rebellious streak when it comes to conventional thinking and societal norms. And some of us might be finding that we're challenging authority and established beliefs with, some more unorthodox ideas. Misunderstandings are very likely, which I would say anyway with Mercury in, shadow. And Mercury square Neptune, but misunderstandings are very common with this in conjunct. We can be prone to that, and other people might feel very closed off or fixed in their belief system and not willing to be open-minded, or just finding clear communication can be a challenge. But I guess the positive in this is that it can give us the opportunity to be more inventive problem solvers. So it is possible that we might be looking to combat problems and come up with innovative solutions and see connections to things that other people might miss. So if you guys lost me on this here, you know, Mercury, which is in the sign of travel, education, philosophy, belief, in conjunct to Uranus and in the square to Neptune means, you know, some of these legal proceedings that are coming, some of these decisions that are being made is going to have some kind of financial, physical implications. There's going to be some agenda there. I'm anticipating also when Mercury and Mars get into close proximity, I think we're going to hear a lot more on gun control and gun regulations. I think we're going to be hearing also a lot more about the financial side of that and how if those cannot be tamed, how that's having an impact potentially on taxes or ammunition connecting to you know, gun sales and usage as well. Environmental stuff, I think, as well, because I could see like the Mercury retrograde is like reworking or rethinking something about travel, specifically air travel, because this is about airplanes, and the square to Neptune is how people aren't seeing where, you know, potential future issues with carbon credits or, you know, the effects of war and how that's impacting gas, you know, or fuel, and how we're seeing excess charges or surcharges or hidden charges or fees now that are being kind of built into what it costs to actually to fly. All right, so then on the 25th, this is when we're going to come into Mercury's shadow. So mark your calendars, make a note. You want to get as much of your Mercury things done, if at all possible, before this date. Okay, that's my recommendation. I'm going to be doing it while Mercury's in Scorpio. Honestly, that's my goal, because I know that this is just going to be a hot mess. But this is the degree that Mercury will retrograde back to. So the retrograde will actually be beginning at 8 degrees of Capricorn, and this will be in mid-December, and it'll retrograde back to 22 degrees of Sagittarius. So if you have any personal planets, let's say 21 to 29 degrees of Sagittarius, you will be affected by this Mercury retrograde. If you have any placements from, let's say 9 to 0 degrees of Capricorn, you also will be impacted by this retrograde, because it'll actually start in Capricorn and retrograde back. And in the midst of all of that, we're going to see several squares to Neptune, okay? Now, on the 26th of the month, and I guess I should say that the shadow is when we start feeling the effects of the retrograde. It's where, you know, even though it hasn't happened yet, we start seeing all of the things that's giving us all the signs, or like the hidden messages, or like the challenges that we're going to be kind of digging up or working through during the retrograde. All right, so on the 26th, we are going to see Mercury trine the North Node. I like it. Once again, it's going to be another 24. Like, what the heck? There are so many 24s happening. Personally, maybe it's just me, I feel like all these 24s are like when we have to like let Jesus take the wheel. Okay, even if you don't believe in Jesus, whatever you believe in, let that deity take the wheel. Because 24 is about what is spiritual, or what happens in other realms, or, you know, what's happening behind the scenes. 24, 24, 24, right? Even the moon will be 24. So not crazy about Mercury square Neptune. Because there's going to be lots of miscommunications and like fabrications and tall tales and mistruths. But I do like Mercury trine the North Node, because it is going to be an opportunity for some people to tap in and be like, something's fishy here, right? Pun intended, Pisces. And, you know, I know the truth. I know the bigger picture, even though so-and-so's telling me that this is how it has to be, or that this is the truth, or that this is the way, or that this is the narrative. So when Mercury trines the North Node, it gives us the opportunity to get in touch with, I think, our true nature, right? Mars is also here. So Mars is in Sagittarius, and Mars is the ruler of the North Node. So we've got the Sun and Mars coming together, where, I mean, there are protests coming, guys. If you think you've seen protests already, there are more coming, especially as Mars and the Sun start squaring Saturn. You're going to be seeing more international protests about some of these secret governing bodies, like the World Economic Forum, like the World Health Organization, like United Nations, much, much, much more secret groups, high families, the group of 300, whatever you're into. You're going to see people that are going to be coming together and basically being like, we do not want to see this collective dissolve that's going on internationally, that is dissolving our borders, dissolving our heritage, dissolving our laws, our rights. It's going to happen. You're going to see it. And yeah, I would say taking time to meditate, tap in and check in with yourself and ask yourself if that's your truth, because your truth might differ from somebody else's truth, right? Or your perspective. And that's the problem, is so much fact or fiction is going to come up with this retrograde that we're really going to have to kind of see, are things taking place, or are things being put out in the media that's being kind of spun in one way? And then when we see the retrograde, Mercury conjunct Mars, people are becoming outraged because, we're realizing that something was falsely represented. I think so. I do, because thank God that Mercury Mars is going to trine the North Node, and it's about 12th house things, or it's about Pisces related things, hospitals, what's hidden, what's subconscious, secret attacks, Mars, Neptune, squares, secret attacks, right? I'm wondering if it's going to be stuff involving like the Navy. I don't know. We'll see. Then on the 27th, we're going to see Mercury square Neptune in Pisces for the first time at 24 degrees. Just barely, but it'll be 24. There we go. And on a full moon in Gemini, no less, right? Oh, man, what a shit show. We got a full moon that's going to be happening, where the moon's going to be in Gemini. It's going to be in opposition to the sun, as always with a full moon, but it's in opposition to Mars, and this is going to be squaring Saturn. And then we're going to have Mercury that's going to be squaring Neptune. So it's like everybody, oh my gosh, this is just, if you celebrate Thanksgiving, Thanksgiving is just going to be full of like lots of political and cultural drama, I think. And a lot of people who have some really strong opinions. I mean, it's so interesting to see the full moon in Gemini take place always around this time, where we're definitely talking about faith and belief systems and culture and religion and all that stuff. But very different when we see squares to Saturn, where we're feeling limited, or we're feeling like we have to censor ourselves. And then we're seeing Mercury square Neptune, where we're like, I don't know, can I say this? Like, is this the right thing to say? Is this true? Oh my goodness. What do I think with Mercury square Neptune? Idealistic thinking, because Mercury in Sag is very idealistic, and it can be about philosophy, and Neptune is about dreams, illusions, and imagination. So I do think we're going to see a lot of difference of opinions, but also perspectives, right? I mean, you're going to hear, it's like the telephone game. I've said to you, with Mercury square Neptune, it's like the story becomes distorted by the time it gets to you. And it's like so outrageous that you're like, there's no way that could be true. That's what I see happening with some of these particular squares. So there can be a tendency towards idealistic thinking that does not always align with reality. And so here's where we're going to get sucked into a lot of talking about or discussing some of these topics. I think it is going to be about whether or not we should be teaching certain things in school or in universities, whether or not we should be allowing certain people to immigrate or not immigrate. So interesting, referencing that Tucker Carlson video again. He was talking a lot about how a lot of these like immigration movements have really fallen on Christian nations, right? So we look at like the UK, we look at Canada, we look at the United States, and how they're so very much involved in, taking people who are seeking asylum, or taking people who have had to face genocide, or just seeking support, and they come as refugees. That's very Pisces. And whether or not it's the right thing to do. And I think that you're gonna hear a lot about, well, this nation believes this and that nation believes that. And it's a wonderful video. I recommend listening to it. But they talk a lot about how certain countries don't partake And they were talking about how certain, countries like Egypt or Iran were like, no, we're not taking refugees from what's been going on recently. Also, how China is not really on the forefront of, taking people in the midst of some of this, cultural clash going on in the world. But it falls on these countries like Canada, the United States, and the UK, who are all suffering from a lot of these things, from a lot of these displacements, a lot of this conflict, this potential war. We're seeing with Ukrainians, we're seeing with Palestinians, we're seeing, potentially even with people that are, trying to get in or get out of Canada, depending on your belief system. And I guess what it's going to come down to is, do we feel like it's our fundamental moral obligation to get involved? And what are the rules and the regulations about that stuff? I'm anticipating we're going to also hear more about the moral obligations of whether or not, we pursue legal or take legal action against drug and pharmaceutical companies, right? Saturn and Neptune is the responsibility of drug and pharma, and whether or not there's some significant data or information or lawsuits that come out throughout this transit. I think we could definitely see some big things revolving around the Supreme Court as well. So I'll be watching all of that. Watch for confusion and misunderstandings. It is just part of the course with some of these squares. I do feel like we are going to have to really be conscious and aware that there is going to be a tendency for people to have very overactive imaginations, vivid imaginations, and that can be a strength or a challenge, but staying grounded in the midst of this is definitely not going to be easy when people might quite literally be living in a daydream or a fantasy or a drug-induced state. Maybe they've drank the Kool-Aid, right? I could definitely see things coming up around, religious cults or spiritual cults for sure with all of these conjunctions in Sagittarius square Saturn and Neptune for sure. This can definitely also bring up the topic of people being sensitive to criticism. So I'm anticipating there's going to be a ton of keyboard warriors during this time, people who are out there talking about their triggers and their preferred pronouns and, whether or not somebody should go to jail because they misgender somebody or like whatever. I mean, these are the kinds of things that what we're going to be hearing about. Also an attack on truth and whether or not censorship is a thing that we need to be aware of, that's potentially taking away not just our right to be able to freely communicate, but I think it's going to seep into really changing or turning over certain laws, which might limit us as well. Difficulty focusing, inspiration or creativity. So I guess the positive side is that it can enhance creative thinking. It can give us imaginative solutions to problems, and it can really help us, especially in creative fields like art, music, or even writing. Definitely spiritual or metaphysical interests are going to come up, especially with Sagittarius and Pisces being triggered. These are very metaphysical signs. So it is possible that there's going to be more of an interest in spiritual or mystical matters. We might be drawn to the depths of the unconscious mind and seeking a connection to metaphysical realms. But we can also be kind of tangoing a little bit with escapism tendencies, where we're using substances to cope with challenges of reality. And Mercury being cars, people driving or traveling under the influence, moving around under the influence. I think laws and legality revolving around substances, resources, legal recreational drug use, and assisted suicide will be topics as well. And really what it's going to come down to is, is it empathy and compassion? Or are we just completely disillusioned in thinking that, everybody has a right to, kind of interject and throw their hat into the ring and suggest that everybody has to conform for the sake of everybody being on the same page. So much of the squares to Neptune are about trying to force something to kind of dissolve, right? So remember that even though some of these things you may or may not believe in, they believe in you. There is going to be some big decisions that are being made globally, or big discussions being made globally about what needs to be dissolved, because it is possible that it is keeping us kind of separate. Throughout all of this, it's important to be really focusing on empathy and compassion. And I think that this can give us a really strong sense of empathy and compassion for other people. It can allow us to be more intuitive and sensitive to the emotions of other people. and just the energies that are around us as well. Now, finally, on December 1st, we will see Mercury enter into the sign of Capricorn. So technically, Sag will stay there until December 1st. And this is an interesting one for me because, you know, Mercury will retrograde back over this degree. This will actually be happening when we have the winter solstice here in the northern hemisphere. So if you guys have looked at that chart, the day that the sun enters into Capricorn, Mercury retrogrades. So that in itself is saying like we're all reevaluating or discussing, reworking or reorganizing something about responsibility, boundaries, control, government, those who are kind of like leaders or in positions of power. It might also talk about there being kind of like a reworking or a change up that's going on within job numbers and things within government. So we'll talk about that more then. But essentially Mercury enters Capricorn on the 1st, and the retrograde itself will begin on the 13th. So we'll see the retrograde on the 13th of December. So Mercury is going to slow down, right? It's only going to go to about 8 degrees. So when it stations from the 11th through the 13th, it will be at 8 degrees of Capricorn. We will see Mercury re-enter Sagittarius, and this will be on December 23rd. And from the 23rd of December until the 1st of January, we will still be Mercury retrograde. So actually Mercury will turn direct on January the 1st. Now, something that I want you guys to just keep in mind, and this is why I kind of have to make 2 videos. I want to make it first about Mercury and Sag, and we'll do the retrograde video probably in the next month. That Mercury will re-enter Sagittarius on the 23rd. So you get a bit of a break, and then Mercury returns back to Sagittarius. So you might feel like that area of your chart, you're returning back, you know, maybe you're wrapping something up, maybe something that was missing comes back, or you have to kind of go back and deal with the past in some capacity. We will see on the 26th that Mercury will square Neptune. Okay, again, so that'll be the 2nd square, so miscommunications. And we're going to see a Mercury-Mars conjunction at 24 degrees of Sagittarius on the 28th, okay? Mercury goes direct on the 1st, and will re-enter Capricorn on the 13th. So we'll talk about the Mercury retrograde at a later date. I want to give this some time to kind of see how this plays out. But oh my goodness, several Mercury Neptune squares. Looks like the last Mercury Neptune square is actually going to happen with the moon. Oh boy. Did I read? Now I'm like forgetting. Did I read you guys the Sabian symbol? I think I did. Yeah. So it's about, yeah, I did. Okay. Hello. Very Mercury retrograde moment, right? So let me take you guys through the 12 signs. I want to talk to you a little bit about how this is going to be impacting you guys. And obviously this is going to be affecting my Gemini and my Virgo risings the most because you guys are ruled by Mercury. Also Sagittarius, you're going to be feeling this as well. Capricorn, the retrograde will start in your sign. And if you have any planets from about 21 to 29 degrees of the mutable signs, okay, Pisces and Virgo, you are going to be feeling this as well, Gemini as well. So this kind of hits 2 separate groups of signs. I'm a Western astrologer. I'm going to be using the whole sign method for you guys so you can take a look at where Mercury is going. So let me change this over for you. All right. And I just want you guys to remember, because this is so complex, and once again, we'll do another video on this. It's not just about Mercury entering this house, okay? Mercury is going to be in this house for a hot minute. So it's going to be doing a lot of work, reorganizing, reworking, discussing something in regards to this area of your chart. But it's Mercury square Saturn, so there's a hang up. There will be Mercury square Neptune several times. So there's like trying to reconcile and gain clarity and trying to figure out how to make something work. There will be a Mercury-Mars conjunction, which I really recommend everybody waiting until after that conjunction before you make any moves, because Mars rules the North Node. So it's possible we can make moves, make mistakes, go back and try to correct it and have like a challenging time, Okay, so there's going to be some blind spots. So you got to take a couple things into consideration here. All right, with that being said, let's start with Aries and Aries rising. All right, Aries, so you're going to have Mercury entering into Sagittarius. It'll be moving into your natal 9th house. Now, when it moves into the 9th house, what you're going to be focusing on is philosophy, higher education, travel. These are all going to be areas of focus for you. I would say expect miscommunications relating to travel plans or philosophical beliefs. Use this time to revisit spiritual or educational pursuits because you'll see a square to Saturn, so there can be some delays, a square to Neptune, where there can be some haziness, miscommunications, some weather-related travel issues. And Mercury rules natally your 3rd house of communication, ideas, siblings, or travel, and your 6th house, which deals with daily routine. So I could definitely feel like maybe, you know, delays with travel, delays with education, delays in regards to dealing with pets, or, you know, just being able to find the time to get everything done. Maybe you're trying to travel, but you're juggling other things revolving around work or school responsibilities. That's definitely the vibe that I'm getting. The card that I get for you is the 3 of Cups. So all's well that ends well. Probably like when Mercury starts trining your stuff in the 1st house, you'll be feeling like, you're like, you know what, if other people can't go, I'm still going. Maybe plans have changed, but I'm going to kind of keep the show on the road and learning how to be flexible with some of these shifts that might be going on in your 9th house. Good luck. We've got Taurus and Taurus rising. What's up, Taurus? You're going to be experiencing Mercury entering into Sagittarius in your natal 8th house. Now, Mercury traditionally has connections to your 2nd and 5th. Okay, so your 2nd house of money and possessions, your 5th house of creativity, children, self-expression. And you will be experiencing Mercury square Saturn and Mercury then square Neptune. Okay, so basically the bottom line is this. Really the theme here when Mercury goes into your 8th house is shared resources. And transformation is being emphasized in some way. Transformation of the mind, transformation of maybe how you communicate and you express yourself, transformation in regards to your values and your resources. Mercury could be documents, so maybe you're getting everything ready for taxes, maybe you're talking to somebody about investments, maybe there's a change to your partner's resources. You will be reevaluating through the retrograde your financial investments, insurance, and diving deeper into psychological work, and you may be revisiting issues related to shared resources or inheritances. Now, the squares to Saturn makes me feel like it can bring up some legal matters or authority issues. The squares to Neptune can represent, you know, not being so clear about which friendships you value, not being so clear about whose advice you're taking. I would say be very careful, steer clear of taking any financial advice from friends. Really sit down and really reevaluate what you have and what maybe you're willing to invest or what you're needing to kind of pay off, and definitely start getting all of those documents together for your taxes. I know, not the most glamorous for you, Taurus, unfortunately. The card that I get is the Queen of Cups. And for me, I think this is about getting more so in touch with your emotions, learning to really master emotions and being a little bit more vulnerable and a little bit more open and sensitive. You know, Mercury rules your 5th house, so it can be about learning how to really talk about, you know, what's in your heart, or working through issues revolving around children, child-related issues, childhood issues, inner child issues, and really getting to the core of like what your goals are, what you're hoping to accomplish, whether that's with a group of people or just in regards to a financial matter. Good luck. We got Gemini and Gemini rising. What's up, Gems? Mercury's entering your 7th house of relationships. This is important because Mercury rules your chart. So when Mercury goes into the 7th house, that's where you are. So you're going to be finding yourself communicating, talking to other people more, working with clients, socializing, looking for partnership, asking somebody for their opinion, all of that fun stuff. So it can be a good time for you to actually be getting a reading. You know, your 7th house is your astrologer, your counselor, your therapist. Mercury also has connections to your 4th house of home, family, and past. So the way that I see this is, it's in your 7th house. So it's about, relationship action, partnerships are in the spotlight. It is possible because of the retrograde and the squares that there are miscommunications or misunderstandings in relationships, prompting you to review relationship dynamics. So this can be like you communicating and talking to other people more about what you want and what you need. And it's challenging because you're like, okay, I've already got my hands full at work, or I've already got a lot kind of on my plate. Saturn in your 10th house does represent themes revolving around your responsibilities out in the world and your reputation. So as Mercury retrogrades, look, Mercury retrograde can bring back exes. It can bring some conflicts in communication. You could be questioning whether or not relationships are going to stick. You can be questioning whether or not you're getting along with a boss, or whether or not you're going to, stay working for a company, or if you're going to continue working with like a professional partnership. That can come up. And there can be lots of discussions about what is and is not working at home. Because Mercury is the ruler of your 4th house. So there could be some indecisiveness maybe with a partner about, moving or living situations, or going back and forth with a partner about how to navigate, making changes within the home front, with family members as well. Relatives can be kind of coming into the mix. As well. More challenging for you because Mercury is your ruler, but I'm thinking about like the opposition to your sign and the squares to all this Pisces. You're probably going to be a little frustrated with other people. That's kind of the vibe that I'm getting. And you're going to have to let other people kind of go through the process and work through it, and really pay attention to when Mercury and Mars come into conjunction. That may be the turning point where if you're like, you know what, this isn't working, I'm going to cut this off, I'm done. Or you're going to have some extreme, intense, heated words between you and another person. That could be coming up as well. The card that I get is the 7 of Coins, and I'm not surprised. I think with Mercury square Saturn is like looking at some relationships going like, is this gonna like go the distance? Can I continue to, be with this person for a long period of time? Or, maybe you're just getting to know somebody and you're like, oh, I'm just, this is just so challenging, going through the motions of getting to know somebody and being vulnerable and putting myself out there again. Or maybe it's about wrapping your head around the idea of like needing to make more time for relationships and partnerships and support from other people, and it not just being all about you and what work you're doing. Maybe you're realizing that there's more to life than just that. And it'll give you the opportunity, because retrogrades can be karmic, to connect with the people you're meant to connect with. But I think the 7 of Coins is you asking yourself, am I wasting my time? Is my time here well spent? Is it going to produce anything? Really ask yourself that, because I think that there's a huge theme about what's changing in regards to your status in the world. And I do get the impression that right around the time of the full moon in Gemini is when you're going to have your answer. Okay. Good luck, Gem. We've got Cancer and Cancer rising. What's up, Cancer? You will be experiencing Mercury going into Sagittarius. This will be in your natal 6th house. The good news is that Mercury does well in this house. It's very comfortable in the 6th, where it can kind of get down to business. It is all about health and work-related matters. That's going to be central themes. Because you'll see, a retrograde and some squares, it's possible that you'll experience some disruptions at work or some health concerns. Use this period to revise routines and address any potential health issues. Now, Mercury doesn't just rule your 3rd house of breathing, mobility, communication, and the mind. It also rules your 12th house of hidden subconscious. So to be honest with you, mental patterns, communication patterns, maybe some of you guys are trying to quit smoking. Maybe some of you guys are getting a little agitated because you're wanting to change up your routine. Maybe some of you guys are trying to focus on healing something. It is possible that there can be some unforeseen or unexpected challenges in communications with people at work, or some issues that kind of come out of the blue unexpectedly, where stress and anxiety is really affecting your physical kind of vitality and your overall health. This can also be about making, dealing with repairs to vehicles or gadgets. Now, I think the squares to Saturn can mean really that's where there's challenges where it's affecting your faith or your philosophy a little bit. The squares to Neptune can also indicate that there have to be some scheduling changes in order to better facilitate continuing education, traveling, or being a little bit more open-minded or optimistic. The card that I got for you is the Judgment card, which I like because I feel like this is a wonderful transit to be like, okay, I'm really going to make the decision to start this job, to, commit to this new habit, to be able to kind of turn something loose. So when Mercury and Mars come into conjunction, it might mean that you're finally making a decision to like change jobs or commit to a purpose, I think, that is going to feel a little bit more fulfilling for you in the long run. So it looks like there's going to be a definitive decision that's going to be made about one of these topics during this transit. Good luck. We got Leo and Leo rising. You will be experiencing Mercury entering into Sagittarius, and it will be moving through your natal 5th house in a fellow sister fire sign. For you, Leo, the 5th house is about creativity, romance, creative projects, hobbies, and just your love for life, okay? So romantic partners, parties, connecting with children, self-expression, and I think reconnecting with your inner child and revisiting past romantic interests or projects are possible. Now, Mercury has connections to your 2nd house, which deals with money, resources, and self-esteem, as well as your 11th house of goals, friends, and networks. Be careful with taking unnecessary risks, okay? In particular, I mean, like nothing is guaranteed in the 5th house, whether this is like risks with love or with children or with investments, but I'm looking at Mercury square Saturn, where it tells me that there can be some challenges in regards to what you're gaining. I'm also looking at Mercury coming into a square with Neptune. So, it can almost seem like a relationship or an investment is going one way and then it turns around and then there's like a psych, it doesn't necessarily go the way you think it's going to go. I also feel like if you're hoping to meet somebody, if you're single and you're wanting to connect with somebody, what this wants you to do is focus on being places where you're doing the things that you like to do. Not necessarily what your friends want to do, it's more what you want to do. So hobbies and other things are going to come up, creative projects and places where you can go play. And that's going to allow you, I think, to make it more likely for you to focus on what you love and what you enjoy, but also it can really improve potential relationship opportunities. If you've taken a break from dating, you might go back. If you're in a relationship and you're trying to kind of feel this out, whether or not you want to make it work or if you're going to stick with it, this can happen at that time as well. I also think that when Mars and Mercury come into conjunction, you may be investing or thinking about like going on like a romantic getaway with someone. And it might be something that you decide to do very quickly. And there can be lots of back and forth and like communication with children or younger people or having conversations revolving around your love life and potentially challenges when it comes to finances, because you got Saturn in the 8th. So if you're traveling with another person or if somebody else wants to travel with you, there's going to be lots of discussion about budgeting and what you guys can afford if you're going to be taking some time away together. The card that I get is the 3 of Coins, which I like. I feel like this is about being able to work together as a team. This might also be talking about having opportunities to be able to perfect something that you're working on. The 5th house is the house of self-employment. So it might mean that you're working hard on your own projects. You're working hard as, a entrepreneur to put something out there so that way you can really focus on being able to make more money. But there might be other people involved in this, and it looks like you're making some tweaks or maybe even some investments into something that you have a great deal of pride in. Good luck, Leo. We've got Virgo and Virgo rising. This is important for you, my Virgos, because you are ruled by Mercury. So you've got Mercury entering into Sagittarius in your natal 4th house. All right, couple things. One is, yes, Mercury retrograde can be more challenging for you. Two is it's happening in an angular house, so it will be squaring your placements in Virgo. It will also be squaring placements in Pisces. So Mercury is you. Mercury in the 4th, a retrograde. You might return back home, visit family for the holidays. You might have a change of heart with where you're living and decide that you want to move in or out of a place, or that you're wanting to change your residence. There may be some issues with home renovations and fixing things. And there can be some property or some estate related things that can be coming up. It is possible that this can also be impacting your relationship with relatives or partners. Now, Mercury will square Saturn, which means there's going to be some challenges in terms of communicating with partners what you want, or themes revolving around where you're living. You'll also see squares to Neptune, which are going to do the same thing. Yeah, challenging. At least it'll be private, Virgo. So I don't know what you got going on. You know, or you got annoying neighbors? Are you feeling like you have to move? Are you being pressured to go back home and be with family? Are you having some, relationship changes which are impacting where you're living? But home and family are the main focus. And I would say watch for misunderstandings with family members. It can occur. It is a good time to go back home and meet people, but starting renovations or trying to, complete projects at this time is a little tricky with squares to Neptune, because you could have some people that could be overlooking things or not being as aware of some of the smaller details that you may potentially need to have covered. Now, the Sun and Mars will be there pretty soon too. So there can be a sense of like maybe going back home if you're feeling like you are needing an in-between place, or you're taking some space from a relationship. That can happen as well. The card that I get is the Knight of Wands, which reminds me of Mars when Mars gets into the 4th house. It's possible that you have to quickly move, or you're on the move, or you're traveling, or there is some sense of being like, I gotta go, I can't wait up for you. This is connected to Sagittariuses, Aries, and Leos, so it could quite literally manifest as a relationship with a Sag in your life. Feeling the pressure to make a move, but also feeling limited by other people's lack of commitment or lack of direction. So don't base your living situation stuff off of a partner right now, because other people are going to be unreliable. Make the decision that's going to be best for you. And any which way you slice it, change is the name of the game, because we will be seeing Mercury make a trine to the North Node in your 8th house. So there is some shift that's going on at home. Could be that you inherit something, could be that you're renovating or transforming a home. It might mean that you're putting together your resources with another person to make a change in your living situation. But it looks like things are going to be happening very, very quickly for you. Good luck. We got Libra and Libra rising. You will be experiencing Mercury entering into your 3rd house. 3rd house is all about communication and local interactions. It is also about miscommunications with siblings, neighbors, and short trips, because we're going to see squares that will be happening to Saturn and squares that will be happening to Neptune. I think for the most part, it's a good time to revise your daily routines and reassess your connection to your local neighborhood. Some of you guys might be kind of contemplating, well, do I want to make a change in my vehicle? Do I want to move? Am I going to switch up or make a change with a gadget? That could happen. But the squares to Saturn tell me there are some challenges with scheduling and time. There's some challenges maybe with pets. There's some challenges with work colleagues and daily routine. Contracts are not advised to be signed during these squares to Saturn or to Neptune, especially because the 3rd house is documents. So if you have to, move and sign a lease, if you have to buy a new car, a Mercury retrograde energy in the 3rd house, not the time to do that. If you're wanting to get a new phone, do all of these things either prior to Mercury going into retrograde or after. Pick, you guys choose. It doesn't much matter to me, but I would say be very careful, because Mercury rules your 12th and your 9th house. Those of you guys who are needing to travel, do you have a visa that has to be renewed? Do you have to get a new passport? Document issues could be a theme. Make sure that your car has all the documents in it that it needs. And watch for emails that go missing. That's possible, especially with work. So you can be finding that you're behind on something, or there's some delays with your schedule because you're having some issues with software, missing emails. Look at definitely happen. The card that I get is the Ten of Swords. Well, you know, Mercury rules your 12th house, which can be about sleep-related issues, anxiety, stress, worry. And I'm wondering if the Mercury-Mars connection is going to be about some stress about something ending, or something being kind of cut loose, or something being let go. Mars rules your 7th house and your 2nd. So there might be a bit of like a squabble or a conflict over a matter pertaining to 3rd house things, where it's like there can be a little bit of some fierce exchanges, and somebody saying, you know what, I'm done here, or, you know, I'm cutting this off, or I'm not coming back. And the Ten of Swords is about something ending. So something's going to be ending. It could also be that you have a difficult conversation with a relative about being like, you know, I can no longer do this or that. That's the other way that I could look at it. Thankfully, the trines to the North Node are about, you know, being able to relate to other people, even if it's in a fierce manner. But be prepared to like say that you're done with something, or that you're kind of like letting something go. Okay. Watch the stress, Libra. We've got Scorpio and Scorpio rising. You will be experiencing Mercury entering into Sagittarius, and this will be in your natal 2nd house. Scorpio, 2nd house is all about finances and values. Okay. That's where the major focus is going to be. This will be a time to review your financial situation, your budget, your spending habits. You might be re-examining your values and your possessions as well. Something to take into consideration is that Mercury rules your 8th house of other people's resources, joint resources, like with spouses or insurance or inheritances, as well as your 11th house, which deals with other people, groups, and goals. So when Mercury goes into the 12th house, the 2nd house, you're all about talking about money. The Sun and Mars will come into the sign as well. So you're coming into a very strong period of time, Scorpio, where there's lots of opportunity for money to be made. You may find that this is one of the more kind of financial beneficial times in your chart. I think about Mercury going retrograde conjuncting Mars. I do think that it can mean that there is like a back and forth about money that's owed to you, or a joint situation financially. Mars is very strong. It'll go after what it wants. So in the 2nd house, it means that you're making more or you're spending more. And it might mean that somebody is kind of talking to you about wanting a piece of the pie, or they might go back and forth with you about what they owe you. And then the squares, obviously, to Saturn and Neptune, I think is also about, you know, just because money is going in doesn't necessarily mean that you're blowing it on an expensive date, or you're blowing it on a creative project. Being really mindful and not too overly optimistic about your investments. You know, you're going to feel very inclined to want to spend. And so I would say be very careful, because this is more energy that's about giving to somebody else, paying off your debts, and, you know, really focusing on what you own or what you possess, and being really responsible when it comes to finances and also children. So there can be more expenses relating to children, or if you're self-employed, your own creative projects. That could definitely happen here. But focus on examining your values and your possessions. That's my recommendation. And your goals revolving around these things as well. The card that I got for you is the Chariot, which is interesting because this is about forward motion, movement, getting your ducks in a row, you know, figuring out your goals. Saturn does rule your your 3rd and your 4th house. So some of you guys might be reevaluating whether or not you're moving. Pluto's coming into your 4th house soon as well. So there can be a sense of being like, okay, I've, you know, managed to save X amount of money or make X amount of money. Am I setting that aside to be able to cover expenses relating to moving? And I know some of you guys are also trying to find more space for some of your creative endeavors. So you might be kind of like at a crossroads where you're like, well, do I spend this money that I need? Do I reinvest it? Do I hold on to it? Just be careful. Don't do anything that's going to be too impulsive, because you may find that it's better to hold on to something and have it right now than to blow it, because you've got plans for these funds one way or another. Good luck. All right, we've got Sag and Sag rising. Obviously, this is important for you, Sag, because Mercury will be retrograding in your sign. The positive is that it's going to have you very optimistic, very chatty, moving around, doing a lot of stuff. But be mindful that there is a lot of you getting checked, okay? When Mercury's in the first house, you don't really think, you just speak. So when it's in your sign, that's like doubly so. So you're going to be very opinionated, and those opinions may not resonate well with family or roommates or, landlords or neighbors. Like that can be a bit of an issue because the square is to Saturn. Now, Mercury rules relationships, and it rules your status and your career and your reputation. So Mercury being in its fall and in a square to Saturn means that it is possible that like you have a difference of opinion or philosophy with a family member, and it may create some like relational issues. That's possible. I think that a huge focus with having Mercury in your sign is really about your personal identity and your self-expression. They're in focus, and you may reevaluate how you present yourself and your self-image. Misunderstandings can arise, and you might reconsider your personal goals. Now is also not the time to be making big changes in your appearance based off of what other people tell you you should do. Changing your hair color, cutting your bangs, making big changes in regards to your physical appearance because you're wanting to appease a partner or seem more attractive to other people is not ideal, especially when we see Mercury in a square to Saturn, because it could be a costly mistake, especially when we see Mercury in a square to Neptune, which means that you may or overestimate something or underestimate something. I also could see this as being a little clumsy, like being more maybe prone to accidents or more prone to issues, especially involving water. So be very careful, like Mercury Saturn square, that can be issues revolving around a bump or a bruise or a break. Mercury, when it squares Neptune, could be like, you don't see the dishwasher is leaking and you slip and you fall, right? Obviously touch wood, but sometimes we see some of these issues with water or, deeper emotions or feeling kind of sad or longing for something. And I think a lot of you guys are longing for where is home, or where am I supposed to be, or where am I going, or what is the purpose? And you'll be picking that up a lot. I do think that the connection to your 10th house and your 7th house is maybe feeling like you could or should be further along in relationships or your career, or maybe feeling a little lost. Be gentle with yourself, take your time, allow yourself to kind of work through any misunderstandings or miscommunications. Be very careful, especially as planets come into Sagittarius, like Mars and also the Sun, because you're going to be shooting at the hip a little bit. So there can be a sense of you being like really impulsive, and you could be making some impulsive moves that you might later regret. The card that I get is the Empress, which is interesting because I'm looking at Saturn in your 4th house and I'm like, is this mom stuff? Is this issues revolving around a woman in the house? Is this, issues revolving around standing up for yourself, protecting yourself, loving yourself? The good news is that the Empress is about nurturing energy, right? So it might mean that you're really nurturing your goals and your vision for yourself. I do think that a lot of it is about your future when it comes to your purpose out in the world, or your career and your relationships. So you might be sharing with other people what your goals are, what you're going after, what you hope to achieve. And what's positive is that you have all this Sagittarius coming into your chart, and it's like checking Saturn and Neptune. So it can mean you being like, I'm not there yet, but that's where I'm going. These things haven't physically manifested yet, but this is my goal. And it's about what you are kind of like bringing to life one way or another. Changes with your body can happen here too. So be mindful of that. A Mercury retrograde in the 1st can definitely be changes with your body as well. Okay. Good luck. We've got Capricorn and Capricorn rising. Equally important for you guys. Remember that retrograde will start in your 1st house and it'll go into your 12th. So pay attention to what's happening with Mercury in your 12th house. This is all about the, subconscious realm, dreams, hidden matters coming to the forefront. It's a time for introspection and addressing hidden issues and revisiting spiritual practices or retreats. Now, being that Mercury is first going to be in Capricorn and drop into your 12th, it can be about rest, recuperation, going to foreign lands, healing something. Mercury does deal with the 9th house of belief system, philosophy, and foreign travel. and the 6th house, which deals with health, wellness, and routine. So Mercury going through the 12th house, I mean, I could see some of you guys being like, I'm traveling for medical reasons, or I'm going to see a specialist somewhere that's further away. It might mean that you're making changes in your daily routine or your habits to make it possible for you to have better mental health, or for you to be able to take time away from work, and you're just really focusing on productivity. The challenge here is that Mercury is going to square Saturn, which is your chart ruler. So it does seem that there's going to be some unexpected challenges in terms of legal documents, communication, changes with plans legally, or in terms of education that's challenging you. And I think with Saturn and Neptune in your 3rd house, it's kind of like putting you in a position of having to respond. Okay, so you might have to respond to a document or a phone call or an email. Somebody might be, you know, kind of like pressing you, and you're like, oh my gosh, just give me some space, you know? I also think as Mercury is coming in, it's going to square Saturn and Neptune, but Neptune several times. This is going to be showing you where you're getting maybe clarity spiritually or subconsciously in your dreams, or maybe you're deciding that you want to do like a past life regression, or you're working with a hypnotherapist to be able to kind of better find peace and work through some mental challenges or some mental blocks. Especially when Mercury comes into conjunction with Mars. This is a time that you really want to be mindful. There may be a need to travel or be home or be around family that might be in another place. And it might be a time where you're dealing with hidden forces beyond you, subconscious, you know, frustrations, or kind of like anger or frustration that you have not been kind of dealing with. Okay, so it's about finding ways to be able to transmute that and work through it. The card that I get for you is the Knight of Pentacles. So I think it's about staying grounded. It can be about you as a Capricorn, but also Virgos and Tauruses come in as well that might help you. I think for you, it's about taking time to be like, okay, I can't rush through a healing. I can't rush the process. I need to give myself time to get acclimated and get grounded before making any big decisions. They might be financial decisions. They might be decisions revolving around travel or relocations. And I do think that this is about financial news coming to you. So that's interesting that it doesn't really do anything with any of the financial planets in your chart. I mean, yeah, it's going to square Saturn, but it's not making any aspects quite yet to Uranus. So I don't know, how does that kind of factor in for you guys? Do you guys have plans? Are you working on things behind the scenes? Are you anticipating, you know, putting something together that you're getting ready to launch in the new year? I know a lot of you guys are going through some career or work-related changes. And so for some of you guys, it just might be like a well-welcomed, you know, period of time off or downtime before kind of getting back at it at the beginning of the year. Good luck. We have Aquarius and Aquarius rising. You will be experiencing Mercury going into Sagittarius in your natal 11th house. The 11th house is all about social connections, group activities being emphasized. It is possible, both because of the squares to Saturn as well as Neptune, that there can be misunderstandings with friends and within social groups. This can occur. Revisit your associations and your involvement with social causes. And be mindful of who or what comes back. Friends and blasts from the past can happen very unexpectedly because Mercury rules your 8th house of what is secret and hidden or transformative, and your 5th house, which deals with creativity, youth, and children. So it's possible that like you connect with like a friend from your childhood, maybe like an old romantic connection kind of comes back. Maybe there is a friend that's going through some challenges with their own love life or their own children, and this is about kind of connecting with them and being there to support them. Like Capricorn, you're going to experience Mercury square Saturn, so it is possible that you could have somebody who is, you know, asking you for financial support or asking you, you know, for help in some capacity. And you're like, okay, do I have to be the one to do it? Like, you know, like how does this make me feel if I'm potentially losing a friend, or if I say no to loaning somebody some money? That can definitely come up. But I think for the most part, this is a wonderful time to reassess your goals, right? And at the very least, if you feel like you've been working so much and you haven't had time to socialize, you'll get back out and do that. If you're feeling like it's time to reassess what some of your professional goals are and, a variation of ways that you could be making more money, I definitely think a lot of this is going to be financial. The 11th house is about the money that we make from work. So as the retrograde comes through, it might be that money that you thought was coming in or, something that you thought that was going to actually work out has hit a snag and there's some delays. So it might have you change in the way that you look at finances and your resources and what you're investing your time or your energy into. That could be people as well. The card that I get is the Three of Wands. This is positive. This is about forward thinking, making moves, being on your way to something that's new and exciting. I wonder if this is about, doing some traveling or some collaboration with a group of people and trying something different, right? We're going to have Mercury, Sun, and Mars all in the 11th house. And Sagittarius is an energy that sextiles your sign naturally. So I think that this is going to really probably make you feel good that you've got some support of a group of people. I also feel like it can be people who can give you the confirmation needed to make you feel like you have a sense of reassurance about what you bring to the table and how valuable you are. So spending time around other people can be really helpful and really kind of getting in touch with a group of people who are going to be motivating you to actually make a change. Good luck. We've got Pisces and Pisces rising. You will be experiencing Mercury going into the sign of Sagittarius. This will be happening in your 10th house, which is all about your career and your reputation matters. These are central themes. A little bit more challenging, right? Obviously for the mutable signs. But really it's like any of the Pisces placements are going to feel it. If you're in the early degrees, you're going to feel Mercury square Saturn right off the bat. If you're in like the later degrees, you're really going to be feeling the retrograde and the squares to Neptune. Here's the deal. A lot of planets are moving into your 10th house here soon. Mercury, Mars, and the Sun. So it is a very active time when it comes to your career, when it comes to showing up, getting work done. You may feel a bit overwhelmed. You might feel a bit exhausted because there is a lot of output going on in your 10th house. There's a lot of visibility going on in your 10th house. And it is possible also there is some like rearrangements or reworking of your status or your reputation or your career. Now, Mercury rules relationships in home and family. So if you're somebody who has recently had or experienced a change in a relationship, this might be when it's becoming more public. So if you decided to exit a relationship, leave a marriage, move out of a home with somebody, it becomes more visible now that Mercury is in the 10th house and it's going to square Saturn and Neptune. I think it's going to be about narratives and how you're looking at things. Is it that you had some conflict with your boss or with an authority figure or with a parent? Did somebody tell you, you're fired or, we're letting you go or, hey, this isn't working for me. And are you seeing this as an opportunity to release it and start new? Are you, ghosting people with the squares to Saturn and Neptune in your sign? Are you not giving people a reaction? Is there some self-sabotaging going on? Is there potentially some bad habits that are going on where, the pressure that's coming in from Mercury, Mars, and the Sun in your 10th house is parents getting on your back, it's partners getting on your back, it's bosses getting on your back because they feel like maybe you are not as active as you could be, right? Or you're not seeing as clearly, or maybe you're a little lethargic, I don't know. But when planets are 10th house to your sun, it does have this Saturn quality where you're like, oh, okay, I'll do it. And so all these planets in Sagittarius is about being optimistic. It's about being fiery and like on when you're at work. Doesn't really resonate with kind of like the mopiness or the solo energy of Saturn and Neptune. So there can be some conflicting energies about so much output out at work that you're like, I'm just exhausted. I'm not feeling quite like what I'm portraying out into the world. And there can be some miscommunications and misunderstandings at work or also with relationships. And so one thing I'll tell you, Pisces, is that the squares to the planets in your sign, anything you don't say, any action you don't take, anything you don't respond to, people will respond to that. They'll say, well, you're not doing anything. I didn't get a response, so I'm cutting this, or you didn't get back to me, so the window of opportunity has closed. You'll see this especially when Mars and Mercury come into conjunction, where there can definitely be like reevaluations of, you know, your job or your performance that can be coming up. So, you know, Saturn and Neptune, if you're not getting on well with other people, if you're sleeping on the job, if you're forgetting things, if you're running late, these can all be things that can kind of come up in reviews towards the end of the year. Do expect challenges at work. And I think the positive is that, you know, communication is going to be the highlight here, and not just talking a big game and not following through. There's going to be a need to follow through. The positive is that Mercury will be trining the North Node. So it tells me that you have the capabilities to get this stuff done. You have the talent, you have the wherewithal to do it. It's just kind of believing in yourself and cutting through some of these issues, either with self-sabotaging or issues with self-awareness that can be coming up. The card that I get is the Ace of Pentacles. Whew. So this is a money transit. So that's interesting because, you know, Mercury rules other people and work. So there might be negotiations going on. Somebody might say, well, we've got this new position. Are you sure you can handle it? And you're like, yeah, I can do it. And then you realize, like, you signed on because you knew it was going to give you more resources, or it was going to give you the opportunity to maybe, you know, get a higher salary or better benefits. But then you realize, like, how much work it's going to be. It's not unusual when I see a Mercury retrograde in the 10th. If somebody knows that they're wanting to leave, an opportunity might present itself and it might pop up and you have to choose between the two. And so certainly with the squares, you can be feeling like a little stuck making a decision. But I think the trines to the North Node is about money and the opportunity to really grow in a sense of your security and your stability within your career, and being able to be more self-sufficient here as well. So it may present you with a number of opportunities work-wise. Some of you guys will go back to old jobs. Some of you guys will be choosing between the two, but you're going to be choosing the one that's going to actually provide the most for you, and very positive in spite of some of the challenging squares in your chart. So I'm quite optimistic that you guys are going to see your way through it. Good luck. All right, guys. Well, we'll definitely do another video. Like I said, I'm going to do something specifically on the Mercury retrograde as we get closer. Let's see how some of like the Mercury-Neptune energy plays out when we see some squares between the two, and then we'll circle back around and we'll do a video on that retrograde. But let me know, do you have Mercury in Sag? Do you have Mercury square Neptune natally? Do you have maybe Mercury in the 9th house or in the 12th house in aspect to Neptune? I'd love to hear about that and how that's, you know, kind of played out for you. And equally, your thoughts on some of these world events or how it's impacting you in your own life. Definitely come back to this video throughout this transit, and you can see how some of these predictions track and how we see it really kind of manifest for all of us collectively. But like I said, remember, you know, united, we work together, right? But if we are divided, we are not going to be able to see our way through this. Do not get lost or caught up in the illusion of separation, because really we are all connected and we are all on the path of trying to find the truth in the midst of some of these confusing transits. I'll be back here tomorrow. We're going to be doing live astrology readings. You can catch me here at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. I'll put the link in my community tab if you want to sign up for a donation-based reading. Come hang out with me on a Friday night. It's so fun to do these readings and connect with you guys in the chat. And make sure you're subscribed so you're alerted as to when we go live tomorrow. Otherwise, I'll see all of you guys very soon, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your week. Take care.